Greetings, life management students, and happy module number 5. All right, so this week we're going to be talking about something that maybe you don't associate with life management, but I think it's very crucial to our development as healthy people, and that is the issue of our family dynamics or relationships. The word dynamic really means how we interact in our family. And so this week we're going to deviate a little bit from kind of the structure of being a good student and all of those things, and we're going to talk about something a little more personal, and that is our family relationships. I want to preface this by kind of mentioning that this may be a challenge for some of us. Some of us don't have good memories, good relationships, good interactions with the family that we were born into, our family of origin. However, I'm going to really challenge you to persevere this week, to embrace this material, because even though we may have come from some backgrounds that were not healthy as far as relationships within the family, we learn from that. And I want to show you here how to be healthy, because you all will go on to having your own families. And I want that to be with an understanding of what does a healthy family look like. All right, so let's dive into family dynamics. So first of all, just kind of some definitions about what is a family. There's multiple kinds of families. The first one is the nuclear family. And this is what I think of as the traditional family structure. Mom, dad, kids, right? That's the nuclear family. And you know, that style of family has really decreased as we've gone on in time. In other words, that a lot of our families fall into different kind of categories now than just that traditional mom, dad, and kid family. They tend to be fairly healthy though. So when you have a mom and a dad who have been, married for a good amount of time, and you have biological or natural or adoptive, even siblings in that arrangement, it tends to be rather healthy. I will say that that is not always the case. In other words, there are some couples that have been married for 35 years and 25 of those years have been unhappy. And kids know that. And so it's not always the fact that they've been together for that long that makes something healthy. Extended family. Your extended family really means your maybe grandparents, aunts and uncles, people that are not always in your household, but you consider them to be part of the family, whether you're near or far, right? I have a huge extended family. I have aunts that are like mini moms to me because they still give me advice even at my age, right? A single parent family is really when you have one adult or one parent raising kids, right? I would be a single parent family at this point in my life. So I am the head of the household in my home, and I am pretty much raising all the kids full time on my own. Right? And again, there's some challenges with single parenting. You don't have the support of a partner, so therefore you have to create friends, and you have to create other single parents to be your support system as you're trying to navigate the role of both mom and dad sometimes. Adoptive and foster parent families typically function well, sometimes better than even our traditional nuclear family. Right? It really, we're going to talk about it, depends on the people, and it depends on their understanding of what does it take to be a healthy family. This is something that we have seen an increase in over the years, and that is what we call the blended family. So step families. So this is when we have families that typically you've had divorce, or perhaps the individuals were never married to begin with, but you've had a recoupling. Sometimes both partners bring children with them from other relationships. Sometimes just one partner has children from a different relationship. They may then have children together or not, but it's a blending, it's a combining of a family. And so, the typical definition here is where at least one of the parents has children that are not biologically or genetically related to them, right? They belong to the other partner and somebody else. So like I said, we're seeing a huge increase in the blended family. This tends to be where our American society has gone. Pros and cons here. Step families can function well. The younger the children are when we go through this remarriage or recoupling, the better, the easier, I should say. In other words, when you have a blending of step families and there's teenagers, it's very difficult for that teenager to kind of accept the other person as their new mom or new dad, right? Because they still have a parent that is their mother or father biologically. And so it takes a little more time and trust, building up that trust. Whereas when you recouple with young children, especially toddlers, they really accept that new family rather quickly, right? But again, we're seeing a lot more step families. So what is, before we get into family dynamics, I want to mention one more kind of family, if you will, and that's what we call fictive kin. Fictive kin are really people that we think of as family, but there's no biological relationship. Okay. So again, as a foster parent myself, I've had, many foster kids or youth come through my home, and I have had relationships with many people, and I consider them family. I still invite them for Thanksgiving, for Christmas. They call me when they're in need. However, we're not in any way biologically related, right? As a young person, when I was growing up, I became very close with another family, and they taught me so many healthy things on how to be a healthy person. And I literally consider them to be my second mom and dad, right? And that's fictive kin. People that aren't related to you, but they've had such an impact on your life, or they're such a big part of your life that you think of them as family. And this is healthy, having fictive kin. Right, so family dynamics, what is it? Family dynamics is really how we deal with each other. That's what it is. I mean, it is the patterns of relating and interacting between family members. So it is the way that you as a family, whether that family is biological, whether it's adopted, whether it's your foster family, whatever that be, how do you guys connect with each other or talk to each other or deal with each other? Especially how do you deal with problems? Right? That is your family dynamics. And this can change. It can be very different for some of us who had a family of birth, and maybe you left that family of birth because you went into foster care, or because you were adopted, or because it was an unhealthy situation. That is now a new dynamic with the second family that you have, right? So your family dynamics. So we want to really learn how to be healthy. This is something that I like talking about because, truthfully, think about it. We go through 12 years of education from kindergarten through 12th grade if you stay in high school during those years. We go through all those 12 years of education, and yet no one really teaches us how to have healthy relationships. What does a healthy family or an unhealthy family look like? If I'm in that situation of being in an unhealthy family, what can I do about that? And so I think it's so important that we learn healthiness, right? We learn that. And so when we talk about creating this healthy family environment, and this is something that I as a parent have, I strive to create this environment in my own home. We're talking about that you want to make sure that your kids and everybody in the family, partners included, feel safe. That means there's no domestic violence. That means that I don't have to feel concerned about you kicking me out because you're mad. That means that I don't have to worry about you bringing people into the home that scare me. Right? I'll share with you that as a young child, I was molested when I was a young child. And it was something that I can't really blame my parents for, yet they put me in a situation that led to that. Therefore, as a parent, my kids, we have a rule in our home, and my kids hate this rule, but my kids don't spend the night at friends' houses. They don't. Up until they leave my home, they don't get to do that, even as teenagers. Now, I love to have all of their friends come over. My daughter always has girlfriends spending the night at my house, and I love that. And I will always open my home to any of my kids' friends. However, my kids don't get to go to other people's houses. And part of that reason is for safety. It's because, first of all, I myself have been a victim of what can happen in that situation, but also if I send my daughter to her girlfriend's house and her girlfriend, I may like her parents, I may think her friend is very nice. However, maybe her friend has two older brothers, and maybe those brothers have some boys from the hockey team coming over to hang out that night. I don't know. If I put my children into somebody else's home for the evening, I don't know what's happening there, right? And I can't be the fanatical parent that's calling every 10 minutes, right? So therefore, my kids know they can visit with friends, but they don't get to spend the night. That's just one of my ways to make sure my kids never have to experience something that many of us have had to experience, unfortunately, right? So feeling safe is number one, right? Being heard. Parents are really good at talking, at giving direction, at telling you what to do, not so good at listening. And I was raised in a home like this, right? I was raised in a traditional Mexican home in which parents really told you what to do, but they didn't really listen to you. And so in order to have a healthy relationship, our communication should go two ways. It should be, I talk to you, but you get to talk to me too. And you get to tell me when you think something's unfair. That's okay. I encourage my children to think and reason, and I encourage them to be able to say, I don't think it's fair that my curfew is midnight. Okay, tell me why. Present a good argument to me, not just because I think so, right? But a good argument. And I'm willing to entertain the idea of changing that, right? So being heard, being loved. We would think that this comes natural, but believe it or not, it doesn't. Because again, many parents were never taught how to parent. They weren't taught that. They became parents at 15. They became parents when they were raised in an abusive home and they never were loved themselves. Therefore, how do they learn to love? So it's, although we would think it comes instinctual that as a parent, I love my kids, believe it or not, it's difficult for some people. But we have to do that. We have to create that environment and respected. Again, this means that you don't get to just wail on me and beat me up. You don't get to just shut me down every time I want to voice an opinion or I have something to share. I get to be respected as a child, right? As adults, as partners, we respect our partners, and then to our children, we need to respect them, right? I remember the very first time that I was teaching my young children. Again, I was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years, raising my 3 kids. And I remember when the first time that my son, I thought he did something. I thought he broke something in the house. And so I for sure, I thought it was my son. And I blamed him, and I was going to put him in timeout and the whole 9 yards. Come to find out, it wasn't my son. It was my older daughter who had broken something. I had to apologize. I did. So when I did that, I get, this is my 4-year-old son, right? So I get on my knees so that I'm looking at him eye level. And I say to him, son, mom blew it. Mom was wrong. Mom blamed you for something that you didn't do. You tried to tell me you didn't do it, and I didn't believe you. And I am sorry. Do you forgive me? And I think the first time I did that to my son, he was just in shock. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to receive that, because for him, it was a foreign concept that adults apologize to children, because adults are supposed to always be right, but we're not. We're not by a long shot. We're wrong sometimes. And so he, of course, accepted my apology, but really what I was doing was I was teaching my kids how to say sorry and how to forgive. Those are important things that, again, people don't really teach us. And so as adults, it doesn't mean that we're always right. We have to own up to when we're wrong. And so creating a home where everyone is respected is important. And these things really contribute to this healthy home, to this healthy environment. There are no perfect families. My family makes mistakes. I make mistakes, you bet. But I want to learn from them, right? There are going to be arguments. There are going to be challenges. I tell my students and my own family members, we are going to fight, if you want to call it fighting. We are going to disagree. That is a fact of life. It is how we disagree that's important. That's what's important. How do we handle the disagreement? Not that we won't ever disagree, because nobody lives in that kind of harmony, because we're all individuals and we're all different, and that's a good thing, right? So we want to have that effective communication, right? Effective communication. So this is a healthy family, and we want to talk about this because it is super important. That, like I said, many of us maybe didn't come from this, but I want you to learn it so you know how to do it with your own future family. All right. So unfortunately, toxic family relationships are out there. So sometimes we don't know what they look like. In other words, there's some families that are really good at putting on a show. In other words, you look at them from the outside and you think, wow, they got it all together. Yet you have no idea what's going on at home behind closed doors. And so toxic families, these are really behaviors or scenarios that make you feel unloved, that make you feel unwanted, or even they just make you feel bad about yourself, right? When you feel bad about yourself, whether it's in a family relationship or a romantic relationship, that's unhealthy. That's unhealthy because healthy relationships are all about supporting each other. They're all about making you feel good, right? You know, I personally have no artistic ability whatsoever. Yet one of my kids wants to be an artist. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, I really want them to go to college and get a good degree. I really don't want them to be an artist. Yet I have got to understand and I've got to support them and respect them, that they are different from me. And I've got to kind of fall in line with that. I've got to do that, because if I don't, then I'll make them feel bad about themselves. If I tell them, no, it would be better for you to be an accountant or for you to get a job that you can earn a good living, right? We all have to do that. We all have to understand that we want to make each other feel good. And when we don't make each other feel good, then we're feeling bad about ourselves, right? So all families struggle, but we want through that struggle, like in my family, we're going to have disagreements. You know, recently my son cheated on a test. My son cheated on a test, and this is my son that is like going off to college, and he's got a great GPA, and he's a good kid. He never talks back. I mean, we have a good relationship, and I'm like, what do you mean he cheated on a test? I couldn't believe it when his teacher called me. We had to have a serious conversation about that, because my kids know whatever they do at school or outside of our home has consequences at home, which means if you bring home great grades, I reward you for that. And I'm going to encourage you and support you in that. If you come home with problems, then there's going to be consequences, whether that's getting your phone taken away, whatever it is. But that's the way we work here. And so my point is, I think that I have a healthy family. I've tried to cultivate a home where my kids feel loved. We don't yell in my home, right? However, we still have our problems. We still have our issues. This is, you know, not a huge shocker, but it's something we have to deal with. But we will get through it. During your own time, I want you to watch this Oprah video. It's a little clip from Oprah. It's short, but it's really these 5 different pieces of advice on what happens when you're in toxic families. How can you manage that? How do you kind of get yourself healthy when you come from this unhealthy environment? And this is really, really important. I loved it. It's a cute clip. Oh, sorry. I'll let you watch that on your own time. All right. So again, we're talking about families and siblings. Siblings mean brothers and sisters. And what is the role of having brothers and sisters, really? The presence of siblings is a good thing, right? It affects other children's development. Whether you're an only child or you have brothers and sisters really does play into your personality, into the way that you deal with things, right? The biggest impact from having brothers and sisters is social skills, especially when you have brothers and sisters that are close in age to you. What happens is when you're at home, you have to learn to share. If there's 3 kids and they have 1 bathroom, they've got to learn to share that bathroom. They've got to learn to deal with their arguments, with their bickering, with their, you took my hairbrush, give it back, you know, all these different things that go on at home. They have to learn to deal with that. And that's actually a good thing. Because in learning to deal with problems with our siblings, we learn how to deal with problems with our future romantic relationship, our future friendships with people. It helps to develop some good skills. We learn to share. We learn to argue, hopefully in a healthy way, right? So these are good. These are good, and we develop hopefully some close relationships, right? Having a sibling helps us to alleviate or to take away a little bit of any kind of depression or anxiety we might have, because we have people hopefully to talk to, again, based on some healthy relationships. Hopefully you have brothers or sisters or people that you can talk to, or they notice something's wrong with you. They notice that you seem really depressed and down, and they go to you and they're like, what's going on? I need to know. You know, I always wished I had a sister. I didn't. I only had a younger brother. And so we were 5 years apart. So we were never in school together in high school, and that was a bummer, because I always felt a little bit like an only child because you're so far apart from your sibling. And so you have to kind of learn some of these things without those sibling relationships. So people are just happier when they have positive, healthy sibling relationships. I will say that research shows us, and this is true, I realize it myself and many of people that I know, even if you have relationships with your siblings at home in which maybe you fought a lot or you weren't that close, what happens is when you get older and you have families of your own, you tend to get closer with your siblings again. You do. And so that's a positive thing. And this is just kind of a funny picture, thinking about, you know, those experiences that we have with our siblings when we're younger, and then having a fun experience with our siblings when we're older, right? Yeah. All right, family conflict. And again, all families will have conflict. Conflict means we're going to have differences. We're going to have arguments, disagreements, whatever it is. Some of the things that are really lead to or can influence that conflict are going to be what I call some of those sometimes invisible factors. This is when you have family members that have problems with alcohol, drug abuse, domestic violence, mental health issues, depression, neglect, all of those things. Even if one parent is what we call codependent and they're hiding it. So if you have dad who's an alcoholic and he doesn't come home till 2 in the morning because he's out drinking or whatever it be, and mom is making excuses. So when the kids are having dinner, mom is saying, oh, your dad had to work late, he's not going to be home, he'll work late, and every time dad is dealing with his alcoholism, mom is making excuses to the kids. She's trying to hide it. I assure you, kids know. Yeah, these kind of things, they do it. Sometimes they might not know exactly what the issue is. They just know something's wrong, right? And so it is not a healthy thing to be codependent or to try to hide this. These are things that if one of the adults in the home doesn't get some help, some rehab, some therapy, whatever it be, this is going to impact your children. It's going to impact the family. There's no doubt about it. So this family members end up being really resentful, right? They're mad maybe they're mad at dad, but then they're mad at mom too, because she covered it up and she didn't let us just kind of get dad help. And therefore we had a dad that was non-existent. He was never around, never parented me because he was off doing his thing, dealing with his issues. Right? And so that can lead to somebody having a lot of resentment about that. And we have to be careful because these misbehaviors or these slights that our parents kind of do, we don't want to sweep them under the carpet. We don't want to hide them. As a teenager, it might be healthy to directly confront and just say, mom, it's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for us. Dad needs help. We need to get him into help, or we need to get into an environment that's healthier for us, whatever that be. And so family conflict is going to happen. But when we have secrets are just, whether it's in your romantic partnerships or your family, secrets always tend to lead to mistrust. They lead to feelings of resentment. And so secrets are not something that I recommend. Now there are certain things that I think you need to be careful of, right? Because some of you I may be talking to are minors. There were certain things during my kids' childhood that I didn't tell them. I don't consider it a secret. I consider it to be that they weren't at the appropriate age. For instance, if I have a 7-year-old child and my 7-year-old child comes to me and says something like, Mom, what's incest? Incest is when there are sexual relations between brothers and sisters. Um, I do not believe that my 7-year-old child has the developmental ability to understand incest, not at 7. Therefore, I'm going to tell my child that that's something that I will share with them later in life, but right now that's for mommy to carry. That's not for my kids to carry and understand at that age, right? So that's what I mean is I don't consider it a secret. When my kids become teenagers, I can talk to them about incest and what that means. I don't mind that. I'm a parent that believes in openly communicating about sex and all of these different topics that many parents shy away from. And I think as a parent, it's your job to talk about those things and in a healthy way. And so that's an instance where I don't consider it a secret. I consider it to be that that's just not something a 7-year-old should know right now. And that's my parental judgment. All right, so again, talking about these, family dynamics, how we interact with our families, conflict with parents, meaning fighting with your parents. Well, during those teen years, kind of common. It's something that we can expect. It's something that is part of like a natural growing up. It's part of a young person who's getting to reach that adulthood age. And sometimes they're testing the boundaries, they're testing the waters, they're pushing back, they're trying to figure themselves out. And so it's normal to have some arguing about getting grounded, arguing about curfew time, arguing about you never trust me, all these different things. That might be kind of normal. I'm fortunate because, again, I've had conflict with my kids. Yeah, we directly and openly talk about these things, coming to hopefully a good resolution. Bickering. What's bickering? It's kind of, again, when you, in the morning, you're fighting with your sister because you took my hairbrush and you did this and you always run to the bathroom first and that's not fair. And you just kind of snipping all the time. It can wear you down. It can be annoying. It can be stressful a little bit, but it's kind of a common thing that we would see in a family that has multiple children. So when we talk about closeness within our families, these are a couple different things that we want to look at. Number one, communication. I mentioned to you, do we have what I think of as two-way communication or one-way communication? One-way communication means the parent talks to the child. Two-way communication is there's talking and listening from both directions, and this is healthy. So we want to have your teens openly talking. Support. Do we rely on each other for support? As I said, having a child that it wants to pursue a career that I don't see as the most financially secure career, right? Yet still they have to have my support, right? So supporting each other, even if it's something you don't, always agree with, as long as it's healthy for them, that's okay. Connectedness. What does this mean? Connectedness means how emotionally close you are within the family. So let me give you an example. You can have a family that says, oh, we sit down and have dinner together 5 nights a week. That's pretty good, right? Then again, if I were to go visit the family for dinner and I sat down with them for dinner, this is what I might see. Everybody's sitting at the table, the teenagers are on their cell phones, and the parents are saying, so how was your day at school? Good. How was your day at work? Good. And the conversation's done. Well, this family may sit down together 5 nights a week for dinner, but they're actually not emotionally connected, right? That's not emotionally connection. Emotional connection is when I'm telling you some of my fears, some of my sadness, some of my hurts, when I'm able to share with you some of the things that I'm going through that I feel, right? Our feelings are not right or wrong. And when you openly listen to that, when you receive that, when you don't shut me down every time I try to talk to you, when you don't always say negative things to me and criticize me every time I say I feel this way. So that emotional connectedness is when you feel safe enough that you can talk to either your siblings or your parents or whoever it be within your family. That's connectedness. Control. As parents, I try to inform my parents and students who are parents, to have a happy medium when it comes to control. We need to allow our kids to make some decisions as adolescents and to accept the consequences of those decisions. right? You know, if my kid wants to go off and study art or go be an artist, I might not desire that or agree with it, yet I have to allow that to happen. And I have to say, you know, if they're flat broke and all of that, they're always going to have a home to come to. My home is always going to be here. It's their home, right? And I can support them in that way, yet I can't really force them to not experience the failures on their own. And so limit control, have some rules, but don't feel like you always need to monitor them. For instance, I know of my son has a friend, and this friend, his father has a tracking app on their phone. So wherever the young boy goes, his father can see where he's at. And he calls him constantly to say, you said you were going to be here and you're over at this friend's house. What are you doing there? That's too much. That's a little bit too much control, unless there's some reason that your son hasn't proven you can trust him. But you have to trust your kids to a certain extent, right? And when we talk about authoritative parenting, these are the kind of parents that have healthy parenting because they give their kids some structure. In other words, you have a curfew. The curfew might be 1 or 2 in the morning if you're a teenager or a senior, right? There's some responsibilities. You have chores. You take out the trash. You help unload the dishwasher. You keep your room clean once a week, maybe. There's some responsibility, but then I'm very flexible in that if you come and say, hey, I know my curfew is 1 a.m., but you know, my best friend's having their 16th birthday. Can I stay till 2? You know, we're kind of flexible on some things, right? So that's healthy parenting. All right. So again, talking about these healthy family relationships. So there's some unique kind of characteristics or unique principles that healthy families seem to have. And again, we talked about this. They provide support, encouragement. They encourage, even again, the artist thing, even though I'm not into it and I'm not an artistic person, I've got to encourage that, right? And they have empathy. So even if my kids are going through some, empathy means that you feel something for someone, even though you've never experienced it. So even if my kid goes through an situation or experience that I didn't go through when I was a young person, I need to have empathy and feel for them. And it's a big deal to them, even though I don't know what that's like. For instance, my parents are still married. They've been married for 50, 60 years, right? Long time, and they're still together. They live right next door to me, right? So I'm not a child of divorce. I don't know what that's like to go through. Yet I meet many young people who have been through their parents getting divorced. I need to have empathy for that and try to understand and sympathize with, wow, that must be really difficult. I'm sure it was painful for you to go through that, right? So a loving, warm family is a source of stability. That's a big word. This is a big word that's important. In other words, I need to provide a stable home. And for me, as a single parent, that's really why I went back to school, right? I was coming out of an abusive relationship, and I had to find a way to support me and my kids. And that meant me going back to school and back to college to earn my doctorate degree. So I could be a college professor, which is what I love doing. I absolutely love teaching. And I especially love teaching students that are challenged in some way, that maybe didn't always come from a good background, that didn't come from healthy relationships, maybe foster kids, homeless students, first generation college students. I love working with them because I want to show you how to be a healthy student, healthy person in general. But that was because I made those choices. It was hard. It was really hard to be in school. But I made the choices because I had to provide my kids with stability. I wanted them to stay in our home. I wanted them to have the financial money to provide with them the food, provide them with a family vacation, because those were important to me, to making memories. I wanted that. And so I need to provide stability. And happiness is a feeling. Happiness comes and goes. This is why, unfortunately, in our American culture, we have a 50% divorce rate. The reason I think is a big part of it is people will just say to you, I'm not happy with you anymore. I don't love you anymore. I want a divorce. I want out. But again, those feelings of happiness, they come and go. Unlike when we take our marriage vows, right? When you take your marriage vows, what do you say? Well, until death do us part, right? Yet we are happy to sign those divorce papers because that commitment really wasn't there. right? And so happiness, as a parent, you're trying to create an environment where your kids can be themselves, whoever that be. It can be very different from you. They can be themselves. They can feel stable, safe, secure, loved, supported, and that should lead to some happiness in their life. Right? Give them that sense of belonging. All right, and the last thing we'll talk about, which I think is so important when we're talking about family, but forgiveness can really apply to your friendships. It can apply to your romantic relationships, all of that. What is forgiveness? It is this intentional and voluntary process by which we undergo a change in our feelings and our attitude regarding someone that's done us wrong, an offense. And we overcome the negative emotions such as resentment and vengeance, even when it's justified. Even when somebody really did you wrong, somebody molested you, somebody beat you, someone did you wrong, no doubt about it, and you still can forgive that. This is important. The reason that forgiveness is so important, whether it be in our family relationships or other, is because with forgiveness, you are able to achieve some sense of happiness and some growth. In other words, forgiveness hurts you. It really doesn't hurt the one that did you wrong. It doesn't. It hurts you. So if somebody does you wrong, in my situation, in my case, as a young child, the person that molested me was actually apprehended at some point in time. He had molested many, many, many young children throughout his years. And he never asked for forgiveness. When he was sent for life in prison, he never asked for forgiveness. And so you don't even have somebody who you can say, well, they asked me for forgiveness, so I can forgive them. No, that's not often the case. Most of the time, people will not ask for forgiveness. However, if I would just continue to hold on to that resentment, whether I resent the individual, whether I resent my family, or for whatever reason I was in that situation, what happens is I become bitter. And bitterness is like a cancer because bitterness eats you up inside. It does. It eats you up inside, and it causes you to not have happiness, to not have joy. You just become full of this bitterness towards someone or towards that offense, whatever it be. And therefore, you're not going to gain peace. You will not have peace. Does the abuser or the person that did you wrong care whether you have bitterness? No, they don't care at all. And that's why you need to understand that it's really you that you hurt when you don't forgive. And most of the time, people are not going to ask for forgiveness. They're not. However, sometimes, especially I think in your partnerships, your romantic relationships, remember I said we learn from our parents. And so a lot of us were not taught by our parents to ask for forgiveness or even what is forgiveness, right? Unlike what I demonstrated to you earlier when I showed you that I demonstrated to my children how to ask for forgiveness. And I showed them what it's like to be sorry and take accountability for being sorry, and then to ask somebody for forgiveness and to grant that forgiveness. I showed them that. A lot of families don't do that. And so you may be with a partner, you may be dating someone or in a relationship with someone that was never taught how to ask for forgiveness or how to forgive. Therefore, now that you've heard it and learned it here, you can do that. So don't be so, critical of people, because most of us were not taught how to ask for forgiveness and how to give forgiveness. And it's something that I want you to hear now. It is so important for you to have peace, for you to be able to carry on and be healthy within yourself, which then allows you to be a healthy partner and a healthy parent. Let it go. Let that go, right? Like Frozen. Just let it go. Let it go. Let that bitterness, let that go. Let it go. You can say it out loud. For me, it was very healing and affirming to just be able to say, call out a name of somebody or say what they did to you and say, I forgive you. You never asked me for forgiveness, but I am. It's a gift I'm giving to myself. I am giving myself the gift of releasing any type of hurt and pain that came with that. And I'm going to forgive it. and I'm going to carry on, right? And I think that is so healthy. When you hang on to these feelings, they will just eat you alive. They really will. And many of us have a right to be upset. Your caregivers did you wrong. Somebody did you wrong. And I'm sorry for that. I really, really am. However, holding on to it doesn't hurt them. It hurts you. And so even though we have a right, sometimes we have a right for vengeance. We have a right for it. We have to let it go, right? And you will find that your family relationships will be better if you can let some of these things go. And even better yet, teach your family how to do this. And so in your free time, I want you to make sure to watch this it's a short video, but it is an amazing story of forgiveness and how this person, she has a right to hold on to this unforgiveness and how you let that go, because we need to practice this. It's not something that's easy to do. It's not, but you will feel better for it. You will feel peace about it. And so again, having these healthy family relationships involves forgiveness. All right, guys, we will see you next week.